Hey everyone, it's Chase Elleby and Jared Easter. We are attorneys here at Williams, Elleby, Howard, and Easter, and today we're going to talk to you about mediation. Jared, I like mediation. I know you like mediation. What is mediation?
Mediation is an attempt to try to get a case settled and provide some certainty and some finality to the situation. It's a chance for the parties to get together, the mediator, to help try to discuss the pros and cons of each side and really try to drill down and reach a solution that benefits all involved.
Right, so mediation is basically a settlement conference. It's not binding, meaning if you go to mediation, you don't have to get the case resolved. You're not required to get the case resolved, which is different from arbitration, which we won't talk about. But we will have a bunch of resources in the description below that are free resources for you guys to look into about mediation process and ADR process as well. But anyway, going back to the mediation, right, it's non-binding. Sometimes you have to do it though, right? Sometimes the court will order the parties to mediate. Now, not all courts do it, and either side can ask for mediation. And if you are ordered to do it, then you have to complete the mediation. So, all right, that's kind of what the mediation is and when you may have to do it. So who participates in the mediation?
Well, it's voluntary, so generally if it's a two-party case, both parties would participate. If there's multiple parties involved, I guess technically only two of the parties could participate, but generally you want to have everyone there to try to come to the table and work towards a settlement. So it's the plaintiff, the injured party, the defendant, the person who caused the accident or caused the injury, and then a mediator who kind of is the ringleader and runs the show.
Right. Yeah, I always like to say, okay, who's coming to the party, right? It's always going to be the attorney. It's always going to be you, the injured party. It's going to be the mediator, and then it's going to be the defense attorney. And if it's a corporate representative of whatever, if it's a company being sued, then sometimes they'll have a corporate representative. Sometimes they'll have a corporate attorney. Sometimes they'll have an insurance attorney. At a mediation the other day, and I think there was 4 separate parties on the other side with a one defendant case. So there's a lot of people that showed up for that mediation.
Don't forget the adjusters. The adjusters are usually either there or they might be available via phone so that the defense attorney can call the adjuster to try to get authority to make offers and things like that.
Right, you bring up a good point. So some people might not know what an adjuster is. The adjuster is basically the person that works for the insurance company that controls the purse strings. The adjusters are going to be the ones that decide whether or not they're going to pay out and how much they're going to pay out, typically within the amount of coverage that is available. So yeah, very important for the adjuster to be there or to be available by phone call in case they need to make a quick decision if they're going to increase the offer by X amount or whatever it might be. So
a lot of times, and some people may or may not know this, but the defendants that you're suing really have little to do with making those decisions about, in some certain situations they do because it might be their money, but generally speaking, it's the insurance company and the defendants are just there.
Yeah, it's right. It's very, very rare that the actual defendant, whether it's a person or a company, is paying their own money. And if they are paying their own money, it's usually going to be a huge company that's got a ton of assets that have what we call self-insured retention or a captive insurance company where they basically put away their own money to pay claims up to a certain amount. So in those situations, yeah, the company's going to be making the decisions, but I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, it's always going to be the insurance company making the decision. And 100% of those times, the actual defendant has little to no say about, making the insurance company pay a certain amount or try to get the case resolved.
Pretty sure we've all been at mediations where the defendant would love to have the case settled.
Oh, right.
But yet they're just there to be there.
Right, and we can do a whole nother video on what happens in those situations where the defendant and the insurance company are trying to get the case resolved and how that all works. But anyway, all right, so let's talk quickly about the mediator. So who is the mediator? What's sort of their background?
So mediators are generally attorney. Well, they don't have to be, but they're generally attorneys who have a good amount of experience on a lot of times both sides of the aisle, meaning like they've been a defense lawyer, they've been a plaintiff's lawyer, they understand what evidence can come in at trial, the values of cases. They can really get into the weeds about the case and what we're going to be able to talk about at trial and what's not going to come in. And the goal is to find someone who understands the law side of things, but also is a people person in that they can communicate with both sides and deliver messages and really try to bring everyone to see the other side, the pros and the cons of their case.
Right. I mean, the goal is obviously to bridge the gap. And the good thing about mediation is that the parties get together, the plaintiff's attorney and the defense attorney get together to choose who they want to mediate the case. And like what Jared was saying, you typically are going to want someone who knows about injury cases, knows about insurance. We're not going to want to hire a mediator who only does family law, because they're not going to really know what's going on with a car wreck case or a medical malpractice case or a premises liability case. So that's another, I guess, benefit to mediation, is that if you're ordered to, or if the parties agree to do it, you get to choose the mediator. And you typically want to choose a mediator who's going to be the best for both sides and trying to get that case resolved. So, all right, so kind of lastly, I want to talk about, so what actually goes on in a mediation, right? We talked about sort of what it is, when and why you get there, who the parties are that are involved in the mediation. So what goes on once you finally get to the mediation, starting with where does the mediation usually take place?
Usually at a mediator's office. They're larger offices because they need to accommodate multiple rooms for multiple people. You arrive in the morning and each side gets their own room, or every party, if there's multiple defendants, every party gets their own room where they can hang out and spend the day, because usually mediation lasts quite a while. Then there will be a moment where it's kind of opening statements. Everyone comes together in one of the rooms and each side is able to present the facts of their case, why they think their case is worth what it is and why the defense thinks there are problems. And then from there, you break up, you go back to your separate rooms. And at that point, one side, it's either the plaintiff's turn to make an offer or the defense's side to respond to the plaintiff's demand. And then the mediator goes back and forth between the rooms, carrying offers back and forth and talking about strategy, etc., trying to bring the parties together.
Yeah, and so when you start in that opening session, that's kind of everyone comes together, and yeah, sometimes there's a big opening, here are all the facts, this is why your case is, awful, this is why your case is great, whatever it might be. But a lot of times it's sort of just hey, I'm glad everyone's here, let's try to work in good faith to get this case resolved, because before the mediation begins, both sides are going to send to the mediator sort of a Cliff's Notes version of what's going on in the case. Both sides obviously know the strengths and the weaknesses of their case, so there doesn't need to be a whole lot of time spent on the initial part of kind of going back and forth, but sometimes it's necessary. Like we were talking about, there's an adjuster who showed up to the mediation and they're not really familiar with the case, or that they're only getting one side of the case, and it might be beneficial to be like, oh, hey, I don't know if you've seen this video, if you've seen these photos, this is why we think our case is so strong, and vice versa, right? If the defense attorney feels like the clients might not have a full picture of what the good defenses are going to be, they might be like, well, hey, here's this medical record that shows that you had a back injury last year that you failed to tell us about, so we're going to lean on that to try to keep the amount down. So in the initial meeting too, when you're kind of going over the cases, that's what you say in front of the other person's fine, but overall, just the whole mediation process itself is confidential, okay? Which is great. You want it to be confidential because you want to encourage open and honest discussion about trying to get the case resolved. So what that means is, let's say you can't get the case resolved at mediation and then you go to trial. We can't get up at trial and say, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, defendant Coca-Cola offered us $1 million in mediation, but now they're sitting here telling you to only pay my client $10,000. You can't do that, right? You can't say anything about mediation. You can't even say you mediated the case. So that's the overall mediation when it comes to confidentiality. Kind of the next layer of confidentiality is when the mediator, so when the parties break up and go in their own separate rooms, the mediator is going to come into your room and they're going to talk about the case, right? What you talk about in front of the mediator, they can't go and tell the other side unless you tell the mediator, yeah, you can tell them that, or you can share this information with them. So the mediator's kind of in I don't know how to say like in a good position almost, because he's going to know or she's going to know what's going on both sides, but not be able to tell the other, and they can use that information to try to get the parties to come together and come to an agreement. So that's an important aspect, is that it is confidential. I get asked this all the time with my clients, and it's, do I have to say anything at mediation?
No, you do not have to say anything at all. Well, pleasantries, Tyler. You don't have to give a speech.
Right.
So
You're not testifying.
You're not testifying.
Right.
A lot of times a good mediator will want to talk to you just to kind of build the rapport and let you know kind of the rules and how things go, and also just to get to know you on a personal level, just so they fully understand what's going on, and they can do their job more effectively in trying to reach that settlement. But no, you don't have to testify. You're not expected to really say anything other than just everyday conversation with the mediator or us while we're there.
Yeah, and a lot of times, well, I'll say this, a lot of times, like kind of in your, I'll just say your standard car wreck case, the defendant who caused the wreck is almost never going to be there. It's always going to be just the other attorney and maybe the adjuster. If it's a company, it's going to be a 30B6 rep, which is basically a representative of the company. So it's very rare that you're going to be sitting across the table from the person who actually did you harm. But at the same time, I always tell them, be nice, say those pleasantries and things like that. And even when you're talking with the mediator, yeah, things are confidential, but the mediator is going to pick up on body language. They're going to pick up on your reaction to things, right? So if the mediator comes in and he says, well, the first offer is $10,000, you're like, oh, like you get excited. The mediator's like, okay, we're getting close. Where you might want to be like, hey, shh, let's poker face. Let's not show them our cards just yet. So you don't have to say anything, right? But your body language and the things you do say could have an impact, either good or bad, is how the mediation goes. So
the mediators always want everyone to think they are your friend, right? But really, the mediator's goal, and I've heard tons of them say it over the years, that they want to make the defendant pay more money than they came to pay, and they want the plaintiff to take less money than they came to accept. And they feel like that's the perfect middle ground. Everyone is feeling it a little bit. That's a good day for a mediator, and they will be looking at body language and things you say to try to figure out, like, where is that sweet spot. So it's always something to keep in mind.
Yeah. But, well, I think that kind of wraps up everything that at least I want to discuss when it comes to mediation. Again, I think it's a great process. I encourage mediation in the right cases. Very rarely have I not wanted to mediate a case. But yeah, I think if your lawyer's talking to you about mediation, I think you should consider it. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Like I said before, we will have resources in the description below, so feel free to click and read those. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. I think I hit all the buzzwords. So we will see y'all next week, where we will talk about the trial process, which is kind of what happens after mediation if it's not successful.
As personal injury lawyers, we love what we do, and we're happy to share the experience we've gained in personal injury law. To help our family, friends, and YouTube subscribers, we've shared over 300 personal injury videos covering various injury topics. So if you'd like to gain more knowledge that may help protect yourself or a loved one when you're on the roads or out in public, check out our channel or view our playlist of shorts for quick personal injury tips.